Right now, your brain is running a threat assessment. Not on the room you're in, not on the road you're driving, on what the person next to you thinks of you. Your brain does not know the difference between social disapproval and a predator. It never learned. For 300,000 years, being liked by the people around you was a survival condition. Being rejected by your group meant dying alone in the dark. Your brain is not addicted to approval. It is terrified of what approval once prevented. Think about what a hunter-gatherer band actually was. 25 to 30 people. You knew every single one of them. You had known them your entire life. Your survival depended on their cooperation every single day. Food was shared, shelter was shared, protection from predators was shared. There was no solo option. There was no city you could move to. There was no other job somewhere else. If the group turned against you, you died. Not metaphorically, physically. You walked into the wilderness alone, and you did not come back. This was life for 300,000 years. Not an edge case, not a bad week. The permanent condition of every human being who ever lived until roughly 10,000 years ago. And your brain built a system to handle it. In 2003, psychologist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA put volunteers inside an fMRI scanner and had them play a simple computer game. They were tossing a virtual ball back and forth with two other players. Then, mid-game, the other players stopped passing to them. Just like that. Excluded. Left out of a game they had been playing for 2 minutes with strangers they would never meet again. The scans showed something nobody expected. The region that lit up was the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that activates when you experience physical pain. Not a similar region, not a nearby region, the exact same region, firing with the same intensity, triggered by being left out of a ball game with strangers. Eisenberger called it social pain. And the more sensitive a person's physical pain response was, the more sensitive their social pain response was. The two systems are not just connected. They are, in some fundamental sense, the same system. Your brain does not have a separate file for rejection. It stores it next to injury. Because for most of human history, they were the same thing. But here is the part that gets stranger. In 2011, researcher Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan found that looking at a photograph of an ex-partner who had recently rejected you activated the same neural regions as touching a hot probe. Romantic rejection, physical heat. Same brain, same response, same category. Then, researchers at the University of Kentucky gave volunteers acetaminophen, standard over-the-counter pain medication, for 3 weeks. Then they measured their social pain responses. The people who had taken the painkiller reported significantly less hurt feelings when socially excluded than the control group. A headache pill reduced emotional pain. Because to your brain, they are not different kinds of pain. They are variations of the same signal, routed through the same system, stored in the same file. This is not a glitch. This is engineering. Your ancestors needed a system that made social rejection feel unbearable. Not mildly uncomfortable, not something you could reason through. Unbearable. Because the cost of shrugging it off was death. The brain that treated group disapproval as a minor inconvenience did not pass on its genes. The brain that treated it as a crisis, that mobilized every resource, that lay awake running through what went wrong, that obsessed over every shift in tone and every averted glance, that brain survived. That brain is yours. Now think about what that means for your daily life. Every time you hesitate before saying something in a meeting, your brain is running a threat assessment. Every time you change your answer to match the room, your brain is keeping you alive. Every time you feel that specific dread before posting something, or wearing the wrong thing to the wrong place, or watching a joke land in total silence, your nervous system is doing exactly what it was built to do. It just does not know that the stakes are not what they used to be. In 1958, psychologist Solomon Asch put a man in a room with 7 strangers and showed them 3 lines drawn on a card. The question was simple: which line matches the reference line? The answer was obvious, visible to anyone with working eyes. But the 7 strangers, all of whom were actors, pointed to the wrong line. Every one of them. Confidently. And the real subject, the one person in the room who was not acting, said what they said. Wrong answer, knowing it was wrong, saying it anyway. Asch ran the experiment 123 times. 75% of participants gave the wrong answer at least once. 32% of all answers given in group settings were incorrect, compared to less than 1% when people answered alone. The presence of a group did not just pressure people, it rewired what they saw. Participants later described genuinely doubting their own perception. They thought maybe they were the ones who were wrong. The social signal was so strong it began competing with direct sensory experience, and in many cases, winning. But here is what Asch said that almost nobody quotes. He was not trying to prove that people are weak. He was trying to prove that they were not. He ran the original experiment expecting most people to hold firm. He was genuinely shocked by the results. What disturbed him was not the conformity. It was how invisible it was to the people doing it. They experienced themselves as thinking clearly. Their brain had silently corrected their perception and filed it as a rational conclusion. The system does not announce itself. That is the point. An alarm that tells you it is an alarm is not useful. The fear has to feel like logic. The social correction has to feel like independent thought. Otherwise, you would override it, and your ancestors would die. This is why it is so difficult to hold a position the people around you do not share. Not because you lack the intelligence, because your brain has a system, refined over hundreds of thousands of years, that flags independent thought as a social risk and dresses the correction up as reason. You do not experience it as pressure. You experience it as doubt, as nuance, as maturity, as changing your mind. And it runs constantly. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA has spent his career studying what the brain does when it has nothing to do. When you give people no task, no stimulation, and no problem to solve and put them in a scanner, one network dominates. He called it the default mode network. It activates during rest, during daydreaming, during every quiet moment between one task and the next. It is almost entirely a social network. The brain at rest does not think about food, shelter, or logistics. It thinks about other people, what they think, what they felt, what they might do next, who said what, whether a relationship is safe, whether someone is still angry. The default state of the human brain is social monitoring. Lieberman argued that this is not accidental. The brain, when it has no urgent task, practices the thing that was most critical to survival. Reading the people around you, tracking the relationships that kept you alive. Your idle mind is not wandering, it is doing its most important work. And now consider what we have placed on top of that system. A device that delivers a social signal every few minutes, a notification, a like, a number next to your name that tells you how many people approved of something you made. Your brain does not know this is a proxy. It reads a like the way it would read a nod from a tribesman across the fire. Validation. Continued membership. You are still in. And the absence of likes. Your brain reads that the way it reads the strangers stopping passing the ball. Something is wrong. You may be losing standing. The ancient alarm begins to run. Nobody designed social media to exploit this. They designed it to connect people, and the exploitation was a side effect. But the side effect is running on a 300,000-year-old substrate that cannot tell the difference between a notification and a signal that your life depends on. It receives the input and it responds the only way it knows how. Here is what nobody tells you. The people who appear least controlled by the opinions of others are not people who feel social pain less. The research is consistent on this. People willing to hold positions others reject, to say the uncomfortable thing in a quiet room, to carry an unpopular belief without flinching. They feel the social alarm just as clearly. The difference is not in the signal, it is in what they do with it. They feel the pull, they notice it, and they do not mistake it for logic. That is not a personality trait, it is a practice. And it begins with understanding what is actually happening when the voice in your head says, "Soften that, stay quiet, change your answer." That voice is not your reason speaking. It is a system built before language existed, running a survival calculation it was never updated to retire. Your ancestors needed it desperately. You inherited it completely. What you do with it is the only part that was ever yours.